Well, good morning. Here we are. We have reached the end of chapter 2. How does that make you feel? Some of you are like, woohoo, and some of you are like, oh, it's only chapter 2. No, it's the word of the Lord. So praise God. We have to be somewhere, right? We have to be somewhere. Might as well make our way through Mark. And so I trust that this past week you were able to spend some good time with Jesus. That was last week's benediction, remember? The best way to love someone else is to spend time with Jesus. Did you do that this last week? I hope you did. I hope it was a great time. I hope that it was transformative for you, that you met him, he met you in special ways, because that's what he does. And church, did you know that I'm grateful for you? Did you know that? Because I am. I'm very grateful for you. You all have given me something that I haven't had in a really, really long time, and that is a day off. I haven't had a day off in a really long time, a consistent one, an official one. So let me explain what I mean. For 12 years, as a bivocational pastor, I worked 7 days a week for 12 years. Yeah, you can't even fathom that. That's a long time. Unless you've done it, you can't even fathom it. It's a lot of work all the time, and it never stops. And those work weeks often range from 55 hours a week, which were the light ones. I was thankful for those, all the way up to 75 hours a week. And those were heavy and hard. And when those were consistent, they were especially hard. And so I want to thank you. Last year in July, I was able to talk to some people here at the church and on the cupboard, and we were able to arrange my schedule a little bit and reduce the hours a little bit. And I was finally given my first official day off in 12 years. And what I mean by official is maybe I took a vacation every now and again, but most of my PTO from other jobs went to church things like district conference, general council, that kind of stuff. My PTO wasn't my PTO, it was given to the church. So now I have a day off where I don't have to be sick, I don't have to use PTO, somebody doesn't have to die in order for me to have a day off. So thank you. It feels really good to have one day, and that day is my Sabbath day. It's important that we have a Sabbath day. So in July of last year, we adjusted it a little bit because I was working from January to June last year at the Cup and here at the church, and I was easily getting 70, 75 hours a week, every week, 7 days a week. And that was very tough. And the Lord has brought me out of that season, and I'm thankful for that, and has brought me into this one here. And so thank you for helping me make that possible, to have an actual day off. And God has taught me many things about rest and Sabbath and limits and balance and boundaries since last year. And I'm still very new to keeping the Sabbath. I don't know if I'm doing it right. All I know is that I'm trying, and Jesus is meeting me, and it's wonderful. So I'm still very new to it, but if I could recommend anything to help us understand Sabbath a little bit, it would be this book. It's called Rest of God by Mark Buchanan. And he goes through what it looks like to have a Sabbath day, but not only a Sabbath day, but a Sabbath heart. Because what good is a Sabbath day of rest if we don't actually rest and everything is on our minds, and we don't pause in our souls and our minds and our hearts. And so he helps lead us through that a little bit. He helped lead me through that a lot of it, and it was really, really helpful. And so some of the things that I talk about today are in this book. Some of the stuff we'll talk about next week will be in this book as well. And it's really good. I highly recommend this. I'm going to set this down here. If you would like to borrow it, or at least know the name of it so you can buy your own, that's okay too. Let me know. It'll be here on the table. Okay. So as we turn to the end of Mark chapter 2, we're going to be talking about the Sabbath, I'm sure you could surmise by this point. And also the beginning of Mark chapter 3 because it's the same day, but it's broken up into 2 bits. And so we're going to talk about it today a little bit, and then we'll talk about it next week a little bit as well. And they're very different lessons, but they connect really well. And so you'll see that as we get through today and into next week. So we talk about the Sabbath and Jesus's expectation, and as well as an answer to one of our main questions as we look through the book of Mark of who is this? Who is this? And Jesus, he doesn't even wait for them to ask that question in this one. He just gives them the answer. This is who I am. And this is why they're doing what they're doing, because this is who I am. So we will get to that today. He makes it pretty easy for us in this first half of the story for this Sabbath day. So let's read Mark chapter 2, verses 23 to 28. One Sabbath, he was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and hungry, he and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God, and in the time of Abiathar, the high priest, and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." And we'll stop there. Let's pray. God, we need you today, and we're hopeful. Help us to understand your lordship over the Sabbath, over even ours, even us. How this command of rest is an invitation to rest in you. God, we need you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen. Jesus, according to this last verse here, is the Lord even of the Sabbath, Lord of the Sabbath. And the word Lord there reminds me of a verse that was used to bring me to Jesus. And every time I hear the word Lord, it always makes me think of this verse. And it's Romans 10:9. Romans 10:9. And it says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your hearts that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's the verse. We never go away from that. It's amazing. We never go away from the gospel truths, ever. They are always there. They're not just foundational, we live in them. And this is one of those gospel truths. Jesus is Lord. He is Lord. What's he Lord of? What we allow him to be Lord of? Is that all he's the Lord of? Because then wouldn't that make us Lord? Or is he Lord of everything, of all things, despite what we think? He's Lord of everything, even the Sabbath. That's what he says. He is Lord even of the Sabbath. And what is the Sabbath? A Sabbath, for us, if you were to generalize it a little bit, is a 24-hour period where we stop, we cease, we pause from work, because that's what the word Sabbath literally means, to stop, to cease, to pause. We stop, we cease, we pause, work. And the to-dos, to focus on God and those that God has given us. That's what the Sabbath is. It's not just the 2 hours we spend here at church in a service. Not to get too personal about it. The Sabbath is more than just this church service. God rested on the seventh day, not because he needed to, but to give us an example and a gift. It is a gift to pause. It is a gift to humankind because God knew what he made us to be, a people that would be focused and passionate and caring and want to do so much good that we forget sometimes to just be. And so then he gives us a day to stop. Just stop. No more work. Just pause. It's a day we stop doing so that what's left, what would be left if you just stopped doing all that you normally did? Your normal routine, you just paused it. What would be left? That's what I was left with on a day off. I didn't know what to do with myself. Do you know what to do with yourself? If you have to not do anything, do you know what to do? Like, what's left? If you stop the work, the errands, the housework, the tasks, all the ought-tos, what's left for you? Just being. You're pausing to be. Just be. And that might be confusing, but we have to be something, not just do all the time. We have to be. And so we stop and we pause to be with God and to be with our spouses and to be with children and grandchildren and family and friends. Those relationships help us be who we are. Because in our work, we get so caught up in the doing, we forget who we are. And then we're like, well, I don't know. I don't know who I am outside of my work. Because that's what happens. We lose our identity in all our work. Be yourself again. Rest in Jesus. I thought of a little analogy as I was writing this, and I thought, yeah, that makes sense. And then it continued on, and I was like, well. So here you are. We are not machines. Did you know that? You're not a machine today. It is not your job to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over without stopping. But also understand this, even if you were, even machines have to pause long enough to have repairs and maintenance and checks. And if you don't believe me, you can ask Tom. He knows full well what that looks like. Even if you were a machine, you would have to stop. We have talked a lot since November about different names and aspects of who Jesus is in his being so that we can understand what he does in doing and how we can relate to him. We've talked a lot about that. And in our time in Mark and in our time in other times, what is the day that we most often see Jesus just being who he is and doing out of his being? And it's oftentimes the Sabbath that we see Jesus just being himself. And on this day, we see Jesus practicing things to strengthen and show who he is. That's what he does. He gives us a model of what it looks like to do the Sabbath right. And that's to practice us. We get so lost in the doing that we forget that we are beings. We have to be, not just do all the time. We have to remind ourselves who we are. And so here's a couple of questions to show you what I mean, okay? Is God good? I'll ask you one more time because that was way too weak. Is God good?
Yes.
Yes, he is. He is good. Does Jesus do good things on the Sabbath?
Yes.
Yes, he does. So out of his being, he's showing us what that looks like because he's God. Is God the healer?
Yes.
Yes. Exodus 15, God says, I am Jehovah Rapha. I am the healer. That's who he says. That's his name. And in his identity as healer, does Jesus heal?
Yes.
Yes. He is practicing who he is on the Sabbath. Do you see what I mean? So we'll look more at those two in particular next week, because we'll get to see some good examples of that next week. But let me ask you a couple more questions. Is God merciful?
Yes.
Is Jesus Lord of all?
Yes.
He is. And we get to see him practice this in this passage. And you're like, how in the world is Jesus merciful? It feels like he's yelling at these Pharisees right now. Let's get to it, okay? So we've just read Mark chapter 2, verses 23 through 28. And we're understanding this situation that's come up with Jesus' disciples and the Pharisees. And Jesus' response is, have you not read what David did? Like, why are you harassing my guys? So just so that we understand the reference real quick and get it in our minds, let's read the reference in 1 Samuel chapter 21, and then we'll jump back to our story. So in 1 Samuel 21, then David came to Nob, to Elimelech, the priest, and Elimelech came to meet David, trembling, and said to him, why are you alone and no one with you? So that differs from our passage a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed, because Jesus says he took the showbread, which is what the bread would be called, bread of the presence. He took the bread, which was only good for the priest to eat, and he gave it to himself and his companions, not just himself. But this says that David is alone. The priest is saying, why are you alone? So pay attention. Here we are in the next verse. And David said to Elimelech, the priest, the king has charged me with the matter and said to me, let no one know anything of the matter about which I sent you and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young men for such and such a place. So he's going to go meet up with some people, probably his people. All right, verse 3. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever is here. And the priest answered David, I have no common bread on hand, but there is holy bread, if the young men have kept themselves from women. So what he's talking about here is a ritual purity, is what he's talking about. To be able to be in the presence of God and receive things of God. This is standard of priests, what they had to worry about when they were to eat the bread. They had to be pure and clean. And David says in verse 5, and David answered the priest, truly women have been kept from us. As always, when I go on an expedition, the vessels of the young men are holy, even when it is an ordinary journey. How much more today will their vessels be holy? Excuse me. Verse 6. So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there but the bread of the presence, which is removed from before the Lord to be replaced by hot bread on the day it is taken away. And typically the day that it would be taken away would be on the Sabbath day, and they would make it the day before the Sabbath day, and that way they could replace it on the day that it was supposed to be replaced. That way they didn't do work on the Sabbath day of making bread. So he's removing it now, which is either beforehand or on the Sabbath day. So we're not really sure exactly what day it is, but all we know is it's something that shouldn't have happened, because God has made it pretty explicit in the commands for the priests that only the priests should eat this bread when it's removed. And this priest decided, I would rather my portion go to these men and do a charitable thing. That's what he decided. So let's go back to our story now. Here we are, Mark chapter 2. Are there more verses? Oh, yeah, keep going, please. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Here we go, Mark chapter 2. All right. So with this reference in mind, as we walk through our passage, we see in verses 23 and 24 that we have an issue. And here's the issue. The Pharisees think that the disciples are doing an unlawful thing on the Sabbath day, that they are walking through the grain field, plucking grains, rubbing them in their hands to get rid of the chaff, and then eating them. That's what they're doing. And we know that's true because Matthew 12, and then also in Luke, it records the same story, a little different details in each one, but basically they're all word for word. So we know that's what they're doing, and the Pharisees are going, what are you doing? Why aren't you reprimanding them? Here's my question. This is an important question. Did they break the law? Did the disciples break the law? So here we go. We have an issue, but isn't actually an issue. So I'm going to get a vote, if that's okay. A little interaction this morning. What's that? Yes. So, and God's law. God's law, okay? So, little vote here. Is what they've done an issue, yes or no? Okay. So, yeses. If you think this is an issue, would you raise your hand? So, we got maybe one or two, okay? The rest of you, I'm assuming, is a no, but I'll ask anyway. Is this an issue, yes or no? So, no's, raise your hand. Okay. So, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm just going to let you feel it out as we go, okay? But it's important to ask this question, okay? And this is why it's important, because we want to know, did they actually break the law? And if they broke the law, isn't an issue. How about it? If they broke the law, isn't an issue, yes or no? I don't know. I don't know. I just leave it up to Jesus. I don't know. Do you? I mean, your gut feeling would tell you what you think. So here we go. Fun fact before we get to this answer. But I promise I'll answer it, of whether or not they broke the law. The word lawful here, which is the same lawful word that gets used throughout the rest of the New Testament, okay? So the word lawful here in the Greek is a compound word, and we all know what a compound word is. It's where you take two words and you squish them together, and now you have a fun word that means the same thing as if they weren't together, right? So like the word cannot, for those that are younger in the audience that need to know what a compound word is. So here we go. The first word in the Greek means from or comes by or sourced by. Got it? Okay. And then the second word is I am. And that's it. There's no other meaning to it. So the word literally means sourced by the I am or from the I am. That's what the word lawful means in the Greek. That's so cool. So I just wanted to give you that fun fact before I answered this question, because I thought it was fun enough to interrupt what we were doing. So did the disciples actually break the law? Yes, they did. They didn't break the law by walking through the fields. The Jewish folk on the Sabbath day were allowed to walk almost a half a mile on the Sabbath day for it to not be considered work, and it was okay. So walking through the field, not a big deal. When they plucked the grains from the wheat, did not break the law. There's a law that says you're allowed to pluck grain on the Sabbath. I don't know why that's okay, but it's okay. Then the problem comes when they're rubbing it in their hands and blowing off the chaff and eating it. That's when they break the law, because that's considered work, according to the Old Testament. So they break the law when they rub it and eat it. That's a problem, because you're making food at that point, even though it's not technically making food. I don't know. So, but they did break the law. According to God's law, they broke it. So here's the problem. Is it an issue? Technically, right? If we're wanting to follow the law perfectly, technically it's an issue. And so the Pharisees bring it up. Here's the problem with the Pharisees. Pharisees, they don't usually bring up things for good reasons. So Jesus is defending these disciples and being upset with the Pharisees, but the Pharisees are technically right. But here's the problem with the Pharisees is they condemn and they accuse and they press for obedience to look good, not to be correct and be good. And you see that throughout the rest of the gospel. This story and the next story, Jesus starts to shift how he discusses things with the Pharisees. Because in this first little bit in chapter 1, chapter 2, he's been pretty nice and gracious to them and trying to get them to see with their hard hearts that he is who he is. And they're like, no, We're not willing. And so they come with their condemnation and their accusations and they press for obedience. Who else do you know condemns and accuses and presses God for judgment because we do something wrong? Satan. Think about that. How often have I pressed God to come to my defense and squash someone like the Old Testament, or just generally tired of something that's happening and I'm accusing and condemning someone in my own heart or maybe even out loud, and I'm acting like these Pharisees. And I know I've been there and thinking that knowing and doing the right thing made me feel righteous, that my own righteousness puffed me up. And I thought, what are you doing? Why aren't you at my level? Because that's what it does. And I wonder if I've let Jesus take all of my Pharisee heart out or not. I wonder about you, because this is a point of preaching and we challenge our own hearts. Has all the Pharisee heart been taken from you? Are you still condemning and accusing people when Jesus is looking at them going, I don't condemn them and I don't accuse them? And then Jesus comes to their defense. And if you're wondering what Jesus is doing in heaven right now, it's this. This is what Jesus is doing. Look at verse 25. And he says to them, here's an example of why I think they're not doing anything wrong. David's example. David comes in this example that we've just read, and he is asked by the priest, did you keep yourself holy? Did you keep yourself away from the women like you're supposed to, and clean, ritually clean? And David says, yeah, every expedition we do, how much more today are we? And the priest is like, I like that answer. This is good. Let me give you some bread. So while the one law might have been broken, many others were fulfilled in that moment. And Jesus is going, you're seeing the one they're breaking. You have no idea all the ones they're keeping. You have no idea what's going on in them. You're picking out the one thing. What's wrong with you? And Jesus is in heaven right now, interceding for us, defending us, and applying mercy to us through his intercessory prayers. That every time we break the law, he looks at us and goes, oh, here comes the accuser. And he's going to try to get God to pass judgment on them. And I'm going to tell God, no, we're not doing that. I'm enough. Look at all the ones they did keep. Not on their own merit, but on Jesus's merit, right? If we trust in Jesus, we get his righteousness. So here comes the accuser talking about, look what they did. And Jesus is saying, no, no, no. Look at who they are. Do you understand? This is why the Sabbath is so important. We get wrapped up in the doing that we fall for the accusations and condemnations that we're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But we've lost our being. Well, who are you in Jesus? Who are you? Do you know who you are? This is why this is so important. This is why keeping the Sabbath is so important. So you know who you are in Jesus. And the story of David showed that even though they broke the law and they did break the law, the other things were being upheld as well. And then it was up to God. And you know, David could have went anywhere else for food. He was hungry and in need. That's what Jesus said. He could have went anywhere else for food, but he chose to go where? To the house of the Lord, because he knew God would provide for him. And you know what? God did provide for him. He provided to him through a disobedient priest. That's who God provided to him from. And the disciples are hungry and they're breaking the law, but others are upheld. And most importantly, they're walking with Jesus on the Sabbath. These guys have no idea what's so important about Jesus, but we do. And if you're walking with Jesus, every other accusation can just go to hell because it doesn't matter. You're walking with Jesus, and he takes care of all of it. Walk with Jesus on the Sabbath. It's not about you. It's about Jesus. Is Jesus concerned that they're getting things perfect, that they're getting it perfectly right? Is he concerned about that? In this passage, nope. Jesus is not concerned about them getting it perfectly right because technically they're in the wrong. What's Jesus concerned about then? That he's concerned about them being with him. That's what he's concerned about. Being with Jesus. Last week, I really hope you were able to be with Jesus. This week, guess what? The hope is the same. I hope you continue to be with Jesus because it radically changes who you are. In Matthew 12's rendition, as a quote from Hosea chapter 6, verse 6, and Jesus says, I wish you would learn this phrase. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. That's God speaking. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Why? Because God would rather have the relationship of mercy than the religious motion and duty of sacrifice. There is no heart in sacrifice. It doesn't require much. It doesn't. Like next week when we take up our Great Commission Day offering, it is very easy to make that a religious do instead of a being with God and going, oh, God has made me to be generous and I will act through that generosity. It is so easy to look at your budget and go, I can give this much and still be comfortable. It can become a religious do. And I'm not asking us to be religious do people. I'm asking us to be with Jesus. Will you be with Jesus? Will you be with Jesus? Be with Jesus. He desires mercy, not sacrifice. This is God's own heart speaking. And then you get verse 27. And I love this verse. And the way that it hit me last week is so good. And Jesus is talking to them, and he says to them, verse 27, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. They tend to look at the rules and they go, we have to do these. We have no choice. We have zero way to express any bit of who we are through what God has asked us to do. We are just robots going through the motion. And that is not what God has asked us to be. We have choice and personality, and there is so much we can do to express ourselves. And did you know that God made you for a reason? There's a reason. He's not asking you to shut you up. He's asking you to be redeemed by Jesus and express that to the world because you're a gift to the world. And so in this verse, I see this idea of this inescapable law that there's no way. I have to do it this way. I have to. If I do it any other way, I'm doing it wrong. And they're so focused on the doing that they've missed the whole idea of the Sabbath. They've missed it. They've made Sabbath a doing. And what's the word for Sabbath mean? Stop. Cease. Pause. Pause the doing. And they've made it a doing. Are you making your Sabbath a doing? Stop it. That's what Jesus would. He doesn't want that. And this is the way that I understand this verse right here, okay? In our culture today looks at love and they say, you can fall in love and you can fall out of love. And that's baloney. That's not true. But they've made love this force that is just, they have no control. And it just comes over them and it does what it wants. And they go with who they want and they do what they want because that's what love is. And that's false. That's not real love. 1 Corinthians 13 is real love. And every one of those things is a choice. Every one of those things, every one is a choice of expression. You get to express your love the way you want to express your love and the ways that the love is supposed to be expressed. So when patient is kind, and love is kind, and it is patient, and it is not rude, all the knots in it are like these fences. Are not, no, they're not fences. There's like this, don't touch this point right here. Every other point you can touch, don't touch this one. All the do not commands in the Bible, I love them because they're so small compared to everything else you get to do. And there's a lot of knots for love. Don't touch that point, don't touch that point, don't touch that point. Don't do that. Instead of being rude, what could you do? Something else that's not rude. There's so many things, it's infinite. And Jesus is here saying, look, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's a not. It's a point of expression. You can express your Sabbath in all kinds of ways. That's amazing. You get to be with God how you get to be with God. So rest and pause and be with God. It's an invitation. The Sabbath is an invitation. It's the thing he made as a gift to be with him and to be with others he gave you. It's an invitation to spend it with the Lord, who is the Lord of the Sabbath, according to verse 28. He is the Lord of the Sabbath. So if you're wondering, well, Lord, I don't even know what to do on the Sabbath day. Never done it really. What do I do? You ask him. He'll help you. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to Sabbath really well. He can give you rest. Are you willing to receive this gift? To not live in sin like I was living in sin for years. And live in the grace of pausing and resting in Jesus. As the Lord of rest, as the Lord of the Sabbath, he grants and gives better rest than anything. Anything. I hope you receive this gospel truth today, because rest and Sabbath are gospel truths. The work is done. It's done. It's done. You don't have to do anymore. You don't have to try to make God proud. He already loves you. It's done. The whole point of the Sabbath is to rest in that. Can you rest in the truths that are true? Or do we reject them and just keep doing? Because the Pharisees, they're rejecting truths even though they're trying to uphold the law. Don't be a Pharisee today. God, we need you. Help us to receive your rest. Help us to pause long enough to hear you, to be with you, and to make it a day. God, you made it a day on purpose, not just a service. God, I love you today. I pray that you would speak to each one in their own special way, a way to rest in you today. What truths they've been rejecting so that they can receive those and be those. God, we need you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you please stand for our last song?